Son, daughter, I want to tell you about a woman named Dorothy. Most people called her Dot. She was 67 years old. She lived alone in a pale yellow house on Cresthaven Lane, just outside of Columbus, Ohio. The kind of house that had seen decades of birthday cakes and Sunday dinners and arguments that ended in laughter. The kind of house that holds memory in its walls. She had been a nurse for 31 years. Not the kind of nurse who stayed behind the desk, the kind who held your hand when the doctor left the room, the kind who remembered your name on the third visit and asked about your grandchildren on the fourth. She had given herself to strangers her entire working life, and she had done it without once asking for anything in return. Her husband, Harold, had been gone for 14 months. 14 months, 427 days. She had counted every single one. Harold did not go quickly. Pancreatic cancer does not work that way. It took 11 months to take him, and in those 11 months, it took almost everything else too. The savings account they had built over 4 decades together. The retirement fund they had protected through 2 recessions. The small investment Harold had been so proud of, the one he called their safety net. Liquidated in the 3rd month of treatment, when the bills stopped being manageable and started being impossible. Dot had sold her car in month 7. She started taking the bus. She had borrowed money from Claudette. Her daughter had offered without being asked, which made it worse somehow. Claudette lived in Atlanta now, married to a man named Ray Mills, busy with her own mortgage and her own life. She had wired the money in 2 separate transfers. Neither of them talked about it after. When Harold finally passed, on a Tuesday morning in October, Dot had held his hand and told him she was going to be fine. She believed it when she said it. That was 14 months ago. Now it was December, a Tuesday again, 2 in the morning. Dot sat at the kitchen table in her robe and her slippers, the ones Harold had given her the last Christmas he was well enough to go shopping. 3 envelopes were open on the table in front of her. She had already read them. She did not need to read them again. She knew what they said. She knew the numbers. She had been a woman who understood numbers her entire life. And right now the numbers were telling her something she did not want to hear. The Kindle Bible app on her tablet was open. She had opened it earlier that evening with the intention of reading. She had not read a single word. The screen had gone dark from inactivity. Harold's photograph was propped against the sugar bowl. It was from their trip to Asheville 6 years ago. He was laughing at something she had said. She could not remember what. She would give anything to remember what. Dot looked at the photograph for a long time. Then she looked at the ceiling. And for the first time in 47 years of marriage and faith and Sunday mornings and grace before meals, Dorothy Hargrove did not pray. She did not have words. Or maybe she had too many. Either way, the silence between her and heaven felt different that night. Not peaceful, not restful. Just empty in a way that frightened her more than the envelopes did. She turned off the kitchen light and went to bed. She did not sleep. At 3 in the morning, lying on her side, facing the window where the street light made a pale stripe across the curtain, Dot heard something. Not the house settling, not the radiator, not a car passing on Cresthaven Lane. A voice. Quiet, unhurried. Clear in the way that only silence can be clear at 3 in the morning. It said her name, not Dot Dorothy, the way Harold used to say it when something important needed to be said. She did not move. She did not sit up. She lay completely still, and her heart was beating hard, and she was not afraid, which surprised her because she felt like she should have been afraid. The voice said, "I have been here. Every night you did not sleep. Every morning you got up anyway. Every time you stood at that sink and washed 1 cup, because there was only 1 cup to wash now. I have been in every single one of those moments. Dorothy, I have not moved. Dot closed her eyes. Then she opened them, and she said, out loud into the dark room, in a voice that came out rougher than she intended, "If you were there, why did you let him suffer like that?" That is not a question. That is an accusation. You know the difference. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of someone who has just been told the truth and is not offended by it. Then the voice said, "That question deserves to be asked, and I will answer it. But not tonight. Tonight, I only need you to know one thing. You are not alone in this house. You have never been alone in this house." Dot lay there for a long time after that. She did not pray. Not exactly. But she stopped being silent in the way she had been silent for 14 months. The silence of someone who has turned away. This was a different kind of quiet. The kind where you are still in the room, still at the table, even if you have pushed back your chair. She fell asleep just before 5. She slept for 3 hours. It was the longest she had slept in weeks. When Dot woke up, the December light was coming gray and thin through the curtain, and she lay there for a moment, not thinking about the envelopes, not calculating, just breathing. There was something different about the morning. Not better exactly, but different, like a window had been opened somewhere in a room that had been closed for a long time. She made coffee, 1 cup. She stood at the kitchen sink and looked out at the backyard, at Harold's garden beds, empty now. The soil dark and frozen at the edges. He had grown tomatoes every summer. Beefsteaks, mostly. He had been very serious about his tomatoes. The knock at the front door came at 9:15. Dot was not expecting anyone. She almost did not answer. She had gotten into the habit these past months of not answering when she was not expecting anyone. It was easier. Easier to let the world stay on the other side of the door when the world had been so difficult to face. But something made her go to the door. She opened it and found Augustus Bell standing on her porch. Augustus was 71. He had lived in the brick colonial 3 houses down for as long as Dot could remember. She knew him the way you know neighbors. You have never really spoken to by sight, by wave, by the occasional nod across the yard. Harold had liked Augustus. Harold had been the one who talked to people on the street, who remembered names and asked follow-up questions. Harold had been the social one. Without Harold, Dot had not spoken more than 12 words to Augustus Bell in 6 years. He was holding a paper grocery bag. He looked slightly embarrassed about it, the way people do when they show up with something and then worry it might not be welcome. He said, "I know this is early and I apologize for not calling ahead. I do not have your number. I grew more tomatoes this summer than I have any use for, kept the last ones in the cellar, and they are not going to last much longer. I thought you might want them. I know Harold used to grow them. I thought maybe you might like some." Dot looked at him. Then she looked at the bag. Then she stepped back and held the door open and said, "You might as well come in. I just made coffee." Augustus sat at the kitchen table, the same table where the envelopes had been the night before. Dot had moved them to the counter, but she was aware of them there, face down, as if they might overhear the conversation. They talked about tomatoes for a few minutes, then about the cold coming in early this year. Then, in the way that real conversations sometimes arrive without warning, they talked about Harold. Augustus said Harold had been one of the kindest men he had ever lived near. Said that Harold had helped him move a piece of furniture once, a heavy oak dresser, without being asked. Just saw Augustus struggling with it from across the street and came over and grabbed the other end without a word. Dot had not known that story. She held her coffee cup with both hands and listened and felt something loosen in her chest, that had been tight for a very long time. Then Augustus said something that changed the direction of the morning entirely. He said, "I do not know if you are aware of this, but there is a program, federal program been around for about 4 years now, for retired healthcare workers, specifically nurses and aides who worked in underserved facilities, financial assistance program. My neighbor over on Birchfield, she was a home health aide for 20 years. She received support through it last spring. I only mention it because I remember Harold saying you had worked in county hospitals most of your career. You might qualify. I genuinely do not know. But it might be worth a phone call." Dot set her coffee cup down. She said, "I have never heard of that." Augustus said, "Most people have not. That is the problem with these programs. They exist. People just do not know to look for them." He pulled a small piece of paper from his coat pocket, folded twice. He had written a phone number on it. He slid it across the table. He said, "The woman I mentioned, she said you have to act quickly when you apply. There are funding cycles. I do not know when the next deadline is, but if you are interested, sooner is better than later." Dot picked up the paper. She looked at the number. She thought about the envelopes on the counter. She thought about the voice at 3 in the morning, the one that had said, "I have been here." And she thought about how strange it was that Harold had helped this man move a dresser once across a street, and now this man was sitting at her kitchen table on a Tuesday morning in December with a phone number written on a folded piece of paper that might change the shape of the next 6 months of her life. Augustus finished his coffee and said he would not take up more of her morning. He put his coat back on. At the door, he paused and said, "I am sorry about Harold, Dorothy. He was a good man. The neighborhood was better with him in it," Dot said. "Thank you, Augustus." She closed the door. She stood in the hallway for a long moment, holding the piece of paper. Then she went to the kitchen counter. She picked up the 3 envelopes. She looked at them. She looked at the phone number. She looked at Harold's photograph, still propped against the sugar bowl. She thought about what she was going to do next, and somewhere in the quiet of that pale yellow house, in the space between one breath and the next, something that had been locked for a very long time began, slowly, almost imperceptibly, to open. Dot stood at the kitchen counter for a long time after Augustus left. The piece of paper was in her hand. The phone number was written in blue ink, neat and careful, the way older men write things down when they want to make sure you can read it. She looked at it the way you look at something you are not sure whether to trust. She had been a nurse for 31 years. She had filled out more paperwork than she could count. Insurance forms, patient intake forms, discharge summaries, incident reports. She understood systems. She understood bureaucracy. She was not afraid of a phone call. And yet, she set the paper on the counter next to the envelopes and went to get dressed. She told herself she would call after lunch. Then, after lunch, she told herself she would call tomorrow morning when her head was clearer. She washed the 2 coffee cups, hers and Augustus's, and dried them and put them away. She made herself a sandwich she did not finish. She sat in the living room in Harold's chair, the one she had not been able to give away. And she looked out the front window at Cresthaven Lane, at the bare trees and the gray December sky. And she thought about the word assistance. That was the word that was stuck. Assistance. She had never asked for assistance, not once in 67 years. She had been the assistance that had been her entire identity for 3 decades. The one who showed up, the one who helped, the one who made sure other people were taken care of. She had built her sense of self on that foundation so completely that she had never stopped to consider what would happen if the foundation shifted. Asking for help felt like admitting that something had broken inside her that could not be fixed. She knew, somewhere in the rational part of her mind, that this was not true. She had told patients the opposite her entire career. She had sat beside people in hospital beds and told them that accepting care was not weakness, that needing support did not diminish them, that there was no shame in being the one on the receiving end for once. She had believed it when she said it to them. Believing it about yourself is a different matter entirely. The afternoon light shifted and went gray, and Dot was still sitting in Harold's chair when the room got dark enough that she should have turned on a lamp. She did not turn on a lamp. She sat in the growing dark and thought about Harold, the way she often did in the late afternoon, which had always been the loneliest part of the day. Harold had been a man who came alive in the late afternoon. He would come in from the garden or from wherever he had been, and he would make noise, the good kind of noise, moving around the kitchen, turning on the radio, calling out to her from the other room just to say something, anything, because he liked the sound of a house with two people in it. The house was very quiet now. At some point, without planning to, Dot began to talk. Not to Harold. Not exactly. More to the room. More to the air. She said, "I spent 31 years helping people who could not help themselves. I gave everything I had to that work. Everything. And now I am sitting here in the dark because I cannot pick up a phone and ask for something I probably earned 100 times over, and I do not understand why that is so hard. I do not understand what is wrong with me." The voice, when it came, was not startling. It arrived the way it had at 3 in the morning, quietly, as if it had been waiting just outside the sentence she had just spoken. It said, "Nothing is wrong with you, Dorothy. You built your identity on giving. That is not a flaw. That is who you are. But you have confused giving with worth. You have told yourself, without realizing it, that you are only valuable when you are the one providing. And so receiving feels like losing yourself. It feels like becoming less. But I want you to hear this. Receiving is not the opposite of giving. It is the completion of it. You cannot pour from a cup that no one is allowed to fill." Dot sat very still. Then she said quietly, "I know that. I have known that my whole life." The voice said, "Knowing and believing are two different rooms. Dorothy, you have lived in the first one. It is time to walk into the second." She got up. She turned on the lamp. She went to the kitchen counter and she picked up the phone number Augustus had written down. She dialed before she could talk herself out of it again. The program was real. The woman who answered was efficient and kind in equal measure and asked Dot a series of questions that Dot answered with the clarity of someone who had once managed complex patient files and knew how to give accurate information quickly. Yes, she had worked in county hospitals. Yes, for more than 20 years of her career. Yes, she was retired. Yes, she was experiencing financial hardship. The woman on the phone said, "Based on what you have told me, you appear to qualify. I am going to send you the application by email. I need to let you know that the current funding cycle closes in 72 hours. Can you complete the application by then?" Dot said. Yes. She wrote down the email address. She said, "Thank you." She hung up. She stood in the kitchen and exhaled slowly, the way you exhale after you have been holding your breath without knowing it. She opened her laptop and found the email already waiting. She printed the application. She sat down at the kitchen table, moved Harold's photograph slightly to the left to make room, and she began to fill it out. It took her most of the evening. She submitted it at 11:43 at night, 17 minutes before midnight, in the glow of the laptop screen in the quiet kitchen. Then she closed the laptop and sat there for a moment and felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not happiness exactly. Something quieter than that. Something more like steadiness. like standing on ground that holds. She went to bed and slept better than she had the night before. She did not know yet that the harder part was still coming. It came 3 days later. It came in the form of a phone call from Claudette. Dot was at the kitchen sink, rinsing her lunch plate, when her phone rang. She saw her daughter's name on the screen and felt the familiar mix of love and guilt that had been the texture of their relationship for the past 14 months. She answered on the second ring. Claudette said, "Mom, I heard you applied for some kind of government assistance program," Dot said. "Who told you that?" Claudette said. "That does not matter. Is it true?" Dot said. "Yes, it is true." There was a pause, the kind of pause that has weight in it. Claudette said, "Why did not you tell me? I have been asking you for months how you are doing financially, and you kept saying you were fine. And now, I find out from someone else that you applied for assistance. Do you understand how that feels?" Dot set the plate down in the drying rack very carefully. She said, "I did not tell you because I did not want to worry you more than I already have." Claudette said, "That is not your decision to make, Mom. I am your daughter. I am supposed to worry about you. That is what family does. You do not get to decide for me that I cannot handle knowing things. You have been doing that my entire life, and I need you to understand that it hurts. It hurts to be kept out. It hurts to be protected from the truth about my own mother." The words landed hard, not because they were cruel, but because they were accurate. Dot stood at the kitchen sink with the phone pressed to her ear and felt the truth of what Claudette had said move through her like a cold current. She had been protecting Claudette from worry. She believed that completely, but protection, she was now understanding, is not always received as love. Sometimes it is received as distance. Sometimes the people you love most feel your silence, not as shelter, but as a door closing in their face. The call did not end well. Claudette said she needed some time. She said she loved her mother, but she was upset and she needed to not be on the phone right now. She hung up before Dot could finish saying goodbye. Dot stood in the kitchen for a long time after that. She thought about calling Claudette back. She picked up the phone twice and put it down twice. A phone call was not the right shape for what needed to be said. She understood that. Some things are too layered for a phone call. Some things need to be written down slowly, in your own handwriting, where you can see the words before you send them out into the world. She went to the small desk in the hallway, the one where Harold had kept his crossword puzzles and his reading glasses. She found a pad of paper in the top drawer and a pen that still worked. She sat down. She wrote Claudette's name at the top of the page. Then she sat for a moment and thought about what was actually true. Not what was explainable. Not what was defensible. What was true. She wrote for almost an hour. She wrote about the night of the envelopes and not being able to pray. She wrote about standing at the sink washing one cup, and how that simple act had become the loneliest thing in the world. She wrote about borrowing the money from Claudette, and how the shame of that had made her more determined than ever to not ask for more, to not take up more space in her daughter's life, to become smaller and smaller until the problem of her sorted itself out without burdening anyone. She wrote, and this was the hardest sentence, "I think I have been so afraid of being a burden that I forgot I was also a mother. And mothers are allowed to need their children sometimes. That is not weakness. I am only now beginning to understand that." She folded the letter. She found an envelope. She addressed it to Claudette's house in Atlanta in her careful handwriting. The handwriting of someone who had been writing notes to patients and their families for 30 years. Legible and deliberate, and full of care. She put a stamp on it. She put on her coat and her shoes, and she walked to the mailbox at the end of Cresthaven Lane in the cold December evening. And she put the letter in the box and raised the flag. On the way back to the house, she stopped for a moment on the sidewalk. The sky was very dark and very clear, more stars than she expected. She stood there in the cold and looked up and thought about Harold, who had loved the night sky, who had dragged her out onto the back porch more than once to look at something he had read about in the paper. Some meteor shower or planetary alignment, standing beside her with his arm around her shoulder pointing up. She thought about Augustus, who had known a phone number she needed and had shown up with tomatoes. She thought about Claudette, who was hurt and who was right to be hurt, and who loved her enough to be angry. She thought about the voice, and standing there on the sidewalk in the cold, she said, without embarrassment, without rehearsal, into the dark and the stars, "I am starting to see it. I am starting to understand what you are doing." The cold wind moved through the bare trees on Cresthaven Lane. She pulled her coat tighter and went back inside. The house was the same house it had always been. Pale yellow walls. Harold's chair by the window, the photograph against the sugar bowl, the laptop on the kitchen table. But something in the quality of the silence had changed. It was no longer empty. It was the silence of a house where someone was paying attention, where someone was slowly, carefully, with great difficulty and great love, learning to open a door that she had spent the better part of a year holding shut. The letter would take 3 days to reach Atlanta. Dot did not know yet what Claudette would do when she read it. She made herself a cup of tea and sat in Harold's chair and waited for what came next with something she had not been able to locate in herself for a very long time. Not certainty, not happiness, just the quiet, stubborn, unkillable willingness to stay in the room. The letter arrived in Atlanta on a Friday. Dot knew the timing because she had been counting days the way she had once counted Harold's medication doses, carefully, with full attention, unwilling to miss anything. She did not call Claudette. She had said what needed to be said in the letter, and she understood in the way that only mothers who have made mistakes understand that the next move was not hers to make. You cannot write a letter like that and then follow it with a phone call 2 days later asking if it was received. That is not giving someone space. That is giving someone space and then immediately filling it. So she waited. She kept herself busy in the way she had always kept herself busy when waiting was the only option. She cleaned things that did not need cleaning. She reorganized the linen closet, which Harold had always said was the most organized linen closet in Franklin County, and did not require further organization. She made soup from the tomatoes Augustus had brought, a simple recipe she had not made in years, because Harold had been the one who loved it most. And she stood at the stove stirring it, and let herself feel the particular sadness of cooking for one, which was different from all the other sadnesses and had its own specific weight. On Saturday morning, the application status changed. She had been checking the program's online portal every day since she submitted. She had told herself she would check only once a day in the morning, and she had mostly kept to that. Saturday morning, she opened the laptop at the kitchen table with her coffee and the page loaded in the status box, which had said under review for 11 days. Now said something different. It said approved. Dot read the word twice. Then she set her coffee cup down and she read the details beneath it. The amount that had been approved, the disbursement timeline, the conditions. She had expected, without fully admitting she expected it, something larger. Something that would solve the whole shape of the problem at once, the way a key solves a lock. Completely. All at once. The door either open or closed. What she saw instead was a number that was real and meaningful, and that would, if she managed it carefully, resolve the most urgent pressure, the mortgage arrears, the electric bill, the medical debt collection that had been calling every Thursday for 2 months. It would cover those things fully. It would not leave much after. She sat with that for a while. There was a version of herself, not far from the surface, that wanted to feel disappointed, that had been quietly hoping for more, that had built, without meaning to, a small internal picture of rescue that looked more complete than this. She recognized that feeling. She had seen it in patients, in families, in people who had been waiting a long time for good news, and then received good news that was real but not quite the shape they had imagined. The gap between what you hoped for and what arrives can feel, in the first moment, like a kind of loss, even when what arrived is genuinely good. She sat with it until the feeling settled. Then the voice came. It did not announce itself. It arrived the way it always did, in the quiet between one thought and the next, unhurried and clear. It said, "You are looking at the number and calculating what it does not cover. I understand that. But Dorothy, I want you to look at something else for a moment. Look at who you were 11 days ago, sitting at that table at 2 in the morning, unable to pray, alone with 3 envelopes and a photograph. And look at who you are this morning. You made a phone call you did not want to make. You wrote a letter you did not know how to write. You mailed it, and you waited without controlling the outcome. Do you understand what that is? That is not a small thing. That is not a minor adjustment. That is a woman changing the fundamental way she moves through the world." Dot sat at the kitchen table and looked at Harold's photograph against the sugar bowl. She said, "I was hoping for more." The voice said, "I know, and I want you to hear this clearly. I am not finished. What arrived today is not the end of what I am doing. It is the beginning of it becoming visible. You have been asking me to open doors. Dorothy, I have been opening you. That comes first. That always comes first." She did not respond for a moment. Then she said, quietly, "That is not what I expected you to say." The voice said, "I know. It rarely is." She almost smiled. It was the closest she had come to smiling in a conversation with anyone, visible or invisible, in a very long time. She closed the laptop. She picked up her coffee cup. She went to the living room and sat in Harold's chair and looked out at Cresthaven Lane, at the pale winter light on the frozen front yards, and she thought about what it meant to be opened instead of rescued. She was still thinking about it when she heard the car. She heard it before she saw it. The sound of a vehicle slowing down on Cresthaven Lane, the particular deceleration of someone looking for a specific house. Checking addresses, uncertain. She looked out the window and saw a dark blue sedan she did not recognize pulling into the driveway. She sat forward in the chair. The car door opened and Claudette got out. She was wearing a gray coat Dot had not seen before, and her hair was pulled back and she was carrying something. A bag of some kind, and she stood beside the car for a moment, looking at the house the way people look at places that hold a lot of memory, like they are adjusting to it before going in. Dot stood up. She went to the front door and opened it before Claudette reached the porch. They looked at each other across the cold air of the December morning. Claudette said, "I drove from Atlanta. I left last night at 10. I stopped twice," Dot said. "You should have called me. I would have stayed up." Claudette said, "I know. I did not call because I did not want to talk on the phone. I wanted to be here." Dot stepped back and held the door open. Claudette came inside. She set her bag down in the hallway. She looked around the house, the way she always looked around the house. Quickly, taking inventory of what had changed and what had not, the particular surveillance of a child who grew up in a place and still measures it against memory. She looked at Harold's chair by the window. She looked at the kitchen table. She looked at her mother. Then she said, "I read your letter 3 times. Dot said. I meant every word of it. Claudette was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I know you protected me because you love me. I have always known that. But Mom, I need to say this, and I need you to actually hear it. When you keep things from me, it does not feel like love. It feels like you do not trust me. It feels like you think I cannot handle it, and I have been handling things my entire adult life. I can handle knowing that my mother is struggling. What I cannot handle is finding out from someone else, Dot said. I know. You are right. I am sorry, not the reflexive sorry of someone deflecting. The real kind. The kind that cost something. Claudette looked at her mother, and something in her face shifted. Some held tension releasing, and she crossed the hallway in 2 steps and put her arms around. Dot and Dot stood there for a moment, surprised by the weight and warmth of it. And then she put her arms around her daughter and held on. They stood like that in the hallway for a long time. Neither of them said anything. There was nothing that needed to be said. Claudette stayed through the weekend. She slept in her old room, which Dot had kept exactly as it was when Claudette left for college, a habit Claudette had once teased her about, and now, clearly, found comforting. She slept for 11 hours Friday night and woke up Saturday morning and came into the kitchen in her socks. And Dot had already made coffee, and there was something in that ordinary scene, the two of them at the kitchen table with coffee in the morning, that felt like restoration. Like something returning to its right place after a long time in the wrong one. They talked, really talked, the way they had not talked in years. Maybe longer than that. They talked about Harold's stories Dot had not told anyone, and stories Claudette had not known. Small ones, the kind that do not make it into eulogies, but make up the actual texture of a life. They talked about the money, openly, without the protective layer of fine and managing that Dot had maintained for 14 months. They talked about what the approved amount would cover, and what came next, and Claudette did not try to fix everything, which was the thing Dot had always feared. The fear of becoming a problem to be solved. Instead, Claudette just listened and asked questions and treated her mother like someone capable of navigating her own life with some support, which was exactly what she needed and had not known how to ask for. On Saturday afternoon, Augustus Bell walked past the house and saw the unfamiliar car in the driveway and lifted a hand in a cautious wave. Through the window, Dot waved back. Claudette asked who that was. Dot said, "That is Augustus Bell. He lives 3 houses down. He grew tomatoes." Claudette looked at her mother with an expression that was asking for more information. Dot said, "He is the reason I made the phone call. He knew about the program. He showed up with tomatoes and a piece of paper with a phone number on it the morning after the worst night I have had since your father died." Claudette was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think I would like to meet him sometime." Dot said, "I think I would like to properly know him too." Sunday morning, Dot woke before Claudette. She woke just before 5, which was unusual. She lay in bed for a moment, and then she got up and put on her robe and went to the kitchen and made coffee and sat at the table alone in the dark quiet of the house, the way she had sat 14 days ago when everything had felt impossibly heavy. It did not feel that way now. Not because everything was resolved. The numbers were better but not comfortable. The loneliness was eased but not ended. The grief was still present, would always be present, had changed shape but not disappeared. There was no version of this story where Harold came back, or where the 11 months of illness were undone, or where the savings account refilled itself. But something had shifted, something fundamental. She sat at the table and she knew what it was. She opened her Bible, the physical one, not the app on the tablet, the one with the worn spine that Harold had given her on their first anniversary, the one with her name embossed on the cover in gold letters that had mostly faded now. She had not opened it since the week Harold died. She did not open it to any particular passage. She just opened it and placed her hand flat on the page, the way you place your hand on something real to confirm that it is there. The voice came one more time. It said, "Dorothy, I want to ask you something." She said, "Go ahead." It said, "The door I told you I was opening. In all these days, with Augustus and the application, and Claudette, and the letter you wrote, and the conversation you finally had, what door do you think I meant?" Dot sat with the question. She looked at Harold's photograph against the sugar bowl. She thought about standing at the mailbox in the cold with the letter in her hand. She thought about opening the front door before Claudette reached the porch. She thought about the linen closet she had reorganized, and the soup she had made from tomatoes a neighbor brought, and the phone call she had almost not made, and the form she had filled out at the kitchen table until nearly midnight, and the way Claudette had said, "I did not call because I wanted to be here." She said, "It was not the money." The voice said, "Number." She said, "It was not the program or the application or any of that." The voice said, "Number," she said. "It was me. The door was me. I was the one who was closed," the voice said. And now, the voice did not say anything after that. It did not need to. Claudette left after lunch on Sunday. She hugged Dot in the driveway for a long time and said she would call tomorrow, and Dot said she would answer. And they both understood that these were not casual statements. They were small promises, the kind that repair things. Dot stood in the driveway and watched the dark blue sedan back out and turn and move down Cresthaven Lane and disappear around the corner. She stood there for a moment in the cold December air. Then she did something she had not done in 14 months. She looked up. Not at the sky exactly. Not searching for anything. Just up. Open. The way you look when you are no longer hiding your face. She said, "Harold, it is about time. Is not it?" The bare trees on Cresthaven Lane moved slightly in the winter wind. She pulled her coat tighter. She went inside. Augustus Bell was walking his morning route at 7 the next day when he passed the pale yellow house and saw Dot on the front porch with 2 cups of coffee, one in each hand, standing at the top of the steps. He stopped. She held up the second cup. He looked at it for a moment. Then he changed direction and came up the front walk. He took the cup. He stood beside her on the porch. They looked out at Cresthaven Lane together in the cold morning light. The frozen yards, the bare trees, the quiet street, the ordinary and the irreplaceable texture of a life that was still being lived. Neither of them needed to say anything. And that was enough. That was, in fact, everything.